We would like to welcome everyone to the Citizen Information Meeting for the Signalized Restricted Crossing U-turn at the intersection of Route 60, Old Buckingham Road, and North Woolridge Road. It is 5 p.m. and today is April 29th, 2021. My name is Will Wheeler, and I will be presenting today. The purpose of today's meeting is to provide information about this project and allow you the opportunity to ask questions to better understand the project goals. We are doing this as part of our early awareness efforts since this intersection is highly visible to both local residents and residents throughout Chesterfield County. Your feedback so far has been great, and we have adjusted our presentation since it was initially uploaded to the CIM website to better address your questions. A report of the questions and comments collected as part of this process can be made available upon request. Before we start our presentation, we would like to go over some presentation protocols. This meeting is being recorded for future reference, and materials such as a recording of this presentation will be available online. Your microphones are set to mute to remove background noise. There will be a question and answer period after the presentation. The Q&A ribbon on the right side of your screen is the only way to ask questions during this virtual meeting. Thus, those who called in will be unable to ask questions. We are encouraging everyone to use the CIM comment form on the project website. We ask everyone to keep questions polite and free from profanity. Vdot will remove individuals who violate these rules. Finally, we appreciate your patience while we navigate this new format. Starting our presentation, we will first review information about the project. Next, we will review the restricted crossing U-turn. And finally, we will review some of the questions we have already received. After the presentation, we'll answer questions. Approximately 10 minutes before 7, we'll end the question and answer period and provide closing remarks. Our presentation team today includes myself, Will Wheeler, the project manager, Rebecca Worley, our resident engineer with the Chesterfield County Residency, Jason Williams with our Richmond District Location and Design, Jeff McKay, a roadway engineer with AMT, Becky Behringer, our environmental specialist with the Richmond District, Pam Rogers with the right-of-way department, and Rashmi Patel with our district traffic engineering. As part of our early awareness efforts, we have set up a project website and a virtual CIM website for your use. The links to both sites are shown on this slide and can be easily found by searching for Vdot project website in Google. The project website will be updated periodically throughout the design, while the virtual CIM website will be available as a record of our CIM process. On our project website, we have provided information about the project and reference materials to help you better understand how an RCUT intersection works. As shown on this slide, we have provided a PDF of the proposed concept. As our concept is refined, we will update the document. We have also provided several FHWA and Vdot documents explaining how the restricted crossing U-turn operates, and we encourage everyone to review those documents and videos. Since there are concerns about traffic movement through the RCUT at this location, we have also provided a short simulation showing traffic movements through the Signalized RCUT intersection. Finally, to facilitate collecting comments and concerns about this project, we have provided links to both the online and printable versions of our CIM comment form. Our project is located in Chesterfield County at the intersection of Route 60, Old Buckingham Road, and North Woolridge Road. We are proposing to improve the existing intersection by constructing a signalized restricted crossing U-turn, or RCUT. The total project budget, including engineering, right-of-way, utility relocation, and construction, is $13.2 million. If you send us an email, please include either the UPC or state project number so we can make sure the email is routed to the appropriate individual. Why are we proposing improvements for this intersection? This intersection already experiences frequent congestion, and there is an expectation that this will get worse. Woolridge Road at 288 will be connected to Old Hundred Road, and this will substantially increase the usage of this intersection. The intersection also ranks 15th in the Richmond District's 2018 ranking of the potential for safety improvements. There have been 116 crashes at this intersection between 2014 and 2018, and the majority of those crashes were rear-end collisions. This type of crash is typical for areas with traffic congestion. Why did Chesterfield County and Vdot decided RCUT was the better choice for this location? Out of the viable intersection modifications, the RCUT helps encourage the use of main roads, such as Route 60 east of the intersection. Old Buckingham was never designed to handle the large volume of cut-through traffic it currently experiences. The RCUT also better supports the anticipated additional traffic expected from the southwestern portion of Chesterfield County that will travel past this area. We also considered the potential impacts to local businesses and determined the RCUT would have the least negative impacts over the alternatives. The RCUT even provides a better gateway into the Midlothian village through the use of green space after the traffic signal. Why did Vdot decide to fund this project? An RCUT at this location will be safer than the current conditions, and improving safety on our roads is paramount. Thus, Vdot scored safety with a high mark. The project's Smart Scale score is number 13 out of Richmond District and number 55 statewide. Right now, we are validating our project concept and scope. We are holding the Citizens Information Meeting to solicit feedback early in the design process, and we encourage everyone to provide feedback through the CIM comment form. Before we reached this stage, there was an intersection safety and alternative study in 2018. Multiple intersection improvement alternatives were reviewed, and the RCUT was selected. Chesterfield County applied for the Smart Scale funding in 2018, and based on VDOT's review of the project and potential safety improvements, funding was awarded. Our formal public hearing is anticipated in 2022, and construction of the RCUT is anticipated to start in 2025. What is an RCUT? The term RCUT is the abbreviation for Restricted Crossing U-Turn. This is an innovative intersection type where all side street movements begin with a right turn. Why would we prefer this over conventional intersections? An RCUT has less crossing points than a conventional intersection, so it reduces the potential for vehicular impacts. Also, by removing the side street left and straight movements, the number of signal phases drops from 8 to 2, resulting in increased efficiency for this intersection. Increasing intersection efficiency also improves intersection safety because there will be less vehicles waiting to go, resulting in less rear-end collisions. So, what would change by installing an RCUT at this location? For the majority of the traffic movements, an RCUT intersection will function similar to a conventional intersection. For example, Route 60 traffic traveling straight to the intersection will continue in a manner similar to a conventional intersection. Traffic on Route 60 turning both right and left onto Warridge Road will travel in a manner similar to a conventional intersection. Traffic on Route 60 turning both right and left onto Old Buckingham Road will also travel in a manner similar to a conventional intersection. And finally, traffic on Woolwich Road and Old Buckingham turning right onto Route 60 will travel in a manner similar to a conventional intersection. As many of you have identified in your comments, there are still some differences. Traffic on Woolwich Road traveling straight through the intersection to Old Buckingham and traffic turning left onto Route 60 will first turn right onto Route 60, then make a U-turn at a signalized U-turn immediately down the road. From there, traffic can turn right onto Old Buckingham or continue on to Route 60 westbound. Also, traffic from Old Buckingham Road traveling straight through the intersection to Woolridge and traffic turning left onto Route 60 will follow a similar pattern. The only difference is traffic from Old Buckingham will be heading west before making a U-turn at the signalized U-turn. So, how is an arc cut more efficient than a conventional intersection? A conventional intersection has 8 different traffic signal phases, so if you arrive at the intersection and watch the light turn red, there'll be at least 7 groups of traffic that you'll have to wait through before it'll be your turn again. By removing the side street, straight, and left turn movements, the arc cut intersection only needs 2 traffic signal phases. Thus, traffic is able to move quicker, resulting in less time for you to wait before you get to go. As noted at the beginning of our presentation, we posted our CIM comment form on our project website, and we have received a lot of great feedback already. I would like to go over a few of the common questions as part of this presentation. I would also like to encourage everyone to visit the project web page to view the frequently asked questions for additional information. Is an arc cut really safer than a conventional intersection? This has been asked by many of you, and it is a great question. To help illustrate why, I would like to point out the 2 diagrams on the right. As shown in the diagrams, a conventional intersection has 32 conflict points. Conflict points are where vehicles cross each other's paths, and this increases collision risk. The arc cut intersection only has 18 conflict points, or half of the conflict points of a conventional intersection. I would also like to remind everyone that the proposed U-turn movement at this location will be signalized. Thus, you will not be expected to make a U-turn into oncoming Route 60 traffic. We also have a couple of examples of arc cuts that have been constructed in other states. In both North Carolina and Maryland, improving the intersection with an arc cut reduced the number of crashes and fatalities. We understand that an arc cut is a new type of intersection for Virginia, and there are concerns. We would like to point out that roundabouts were also a concern when they were new. Yet as people use them, drivers now are more familiar and have expressed their support. How does this help the walkability of the Midlothian Village area? There are existing ramps at the current intersection corners, but no pedestrian crosswalk signals. Our proposed intersection will include crosswalks and pedestrian signals facilitating safer pedestrian movement through the intersection. How much longer will it take me to drive through this intersection? Because the traffic signal phases are reduced from 8 phases to 2 phases, the travel times are reduced for everyone during rush hour. Outside of rush hour, traffic along Route 60 and traffic turning from Route 60 will still experience less travel time. Traffic from Woolridge and Old Buckingham traveling straight through the intersection or turning left may see a slight increase in travel time due to the increased distance, but will still benefit from the signal phasing reduction. I would like to share the traffic stimulation and ask everyone's patience while I switch screens. As you can see on this video, the traffic signal phases facilitate movements through the intersection, including at the signalized U-turns, to decrease driver wait times. As noted on the previous slide, this simulation is available on our project website for you to view at a later date. How do I get to the village area businesses from Woolwich without having to use the RCUT? Including Lee Gordon Drive, there are currently 3 routes from Woolridge Road to Route 60 that avoid this intersection. Before the RCUT construction begins, Grove Hill Road will be extended to Route 60 and Coalfield Station Lane will be connected to the Grove Hill Road. This provides 2 additional routes to Route 60 from Woolridge Road, resulting in 5 separate routes that will be available. When will construction take place? Construction is anticipated to start in 2025 and continue through 2026. Are long-term detours planned? None are anticipated at this time. I have a question about an area outside of the project limits. Please visit my.vdot.virginia.gov or call 1-800-4-ROAD to make the request. Now, we would like to start our question and answer portion of today's meeting. Before we start, I would like to re-review the protocol discussed earlier. The Q&A ribbon on the right side of your screen is the only way to ask questions during this virtual meeting. That chat window will not be an option for asking questions, and those who called in will be unable to ask questions. We encourage all of you to use the CIM comment form on the project website. We ask everyone to keep questions polite and free from profanity. Vdot will remove individuals who violate these rules. Please also keep your questions for this forum brief so we can better answer them in this virtual environment. For longer questions, we encourage you to email me directly. Finally, we appreciate your patience while we navigate this new format. Our question and answer portion of this meeting will last until approximately 6:50 p.m., and we will answer those questions we are able to answer today. Questions we cannot get to today, either because we run out of time or because they require additional research, will be answered at a later date. If we are unable to answer your question today, please email me your question at william.wheeler@vdot.virginia.gov after this meeting, so we know who to send the response to. I would like to leave this concept up for everyone's reference. For those of you who may just joined us, we are in a question and answer portion of today's meeting. Please use the Q&A ribbon on the right side of your screen to ask questions. Rebecca, would you please read the first question?
Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me? Just checking.
Yes.
Okay. The first question is, what is the design throughput of the RCUT? How does this compare to a roundabout with slip lanes for right-hand turns? Please explain the poor rating of this type, including traffic flow volume VAX, compared to the RCUT.
That's a great question. I would like to first ask Jeff to help answer that question, if he would.
Sure, Will. No, that's a great question. When the traffic study was completed for this intersection, we went ahead and the previous study started out by looking at the design year volumes grown at the agreed to growth rate for Midlothian Turnpike and Woolridge Road and Old Buckingham Road. Based on those numbers, we came up with an ADT of about 63,000 vehicles per day east of the intersection, about 55,000 vehicles a day west of this intersection. In the PM peak hours, the heaviest movement, especially going westbound, you're looking somewhere between around 3,300 vehicles in the peak hour traveling through this intersection heading westbound. Good question about how does this compare to a roundabout with slip lanes for right-hand turns. Actually, this particular intersection actually has 3 of the 4 quadrants are free flow right-hand turns, so they're not signalized. So the only one that's signalized is the right-hand turn from eastbound Route 60 to southbound Woolridge Road. And I can get into a little bit that later why that particular movement is signalized, but it really does in 3 of the other 4 quadrants. It does function as a slip lane would for a roundabout in that they are free flow right-hand movements. My experience with roundabouts is that they're not really functional when it comes to ADTs that are this high. Rashmi, maybe you want to jump in and give a little bit more about VDOT's position on roundabouts, but I know that was probably one of the things that was looked at in the 2018 study, and my understanding is that the volume of traffic is just too high for a roundabout at this intersection.
Thanks, Jeff. You're right. The roundabout at the design year was found to be over capacity for the high volume of traffic that uses Route 60 in this area, and therefore it wasn't a viable option for this intersection.
Thank you, Rashmi. Thank you, Jeff. Rebecca, would you ask the second question, please?
Sure. In the 2018 study, the recommendations identify the RCUT has a tremendously lower benefit cost ratio than other alternatives. RCUT equals 0.13, equals 0.60. How can you justify this nearly non-existent benefit? Why not use the larger benefit? How does this compare to a roundabout with slip lanes?
That is a great question. I would like to ask Rashmi if he would be able to help me with that question.
Thanks, Will. So if you read the 2018 study, there were three alternatives compared. It was the partial displaced left turn, RCUT, and a quadrant roadway. They all had pros and cons and benefits to each one. The restricted crossing U-turn was selected because it had the best balance of addressing congestion, pedestrian accommodations, and safety. And to answer the second part of the question, how does this compare to roundabout with slip lanes? Like we said before, the volume on Route 60 is just too overwhelming for a roundabout in a design year. Thanks.
Thank you, Rashmi. Rebecca, would you please ask the next question?
Sure. How can turning right from Woolridge and then hurriedly trying to cross 3 lanes of traffic to make a U-turn be safer?
Another great question. Jeff, I'd like to ask if you can help me with that, please.
Sure. The way this particular RCUT is set up, if you're on North Woolridge Road approaching the Midlothian Turnpike intersection, we've actually got 3 travel lanes. The far right travel lane, if you want to continue right on eastbound 60, you'll be in the far right lane, and it'll be a free flow movement, which will just drop you onto 60 eastbound, which actually is where that 3rd lane starts heading eastbound. So you'll be in your own lane. You'll be able to continue on eastbound towards down towards Chesterfield Town Center and so forth. If your plan is to go straight across the intersection, or if you want to turn left and go westbound on 60, you'll be in the 2 left lanes, which are signalized left lanes. So when your light turns green, those 2 lanes will direct you into the 2 inside lanes up against the concrete median barrier, which takes you down to the U-turn movement. So there won't be any crossing of a couple of lanes. If you wanted to be in that U-turn lane, you would be in the left 2 lanes, not the right lane. The right lane is going to only be for vehicles that want to continue eastbound on 60. So you won't have that weave that could create a dangerous situation, but this design avoids that.
Thank you, Jeff. Rebecca, would you please ask the next question?
Okay, these RCUTs are made for rural areas, not for urban. That's not a question, it's a comment, but I didn't know if you would like to respond to that.
Rashmi, I'd like to ask if you can help me with this, please.
So RCUTs can be applied to rural areas and urban areas. There's many examples around the country. For example, in Texas and San Antonio, as you guys know, it's a pretty fast-growing area. A similar intersection like Woolridge and Route 60 in San Antonio, with multiple lanes approaching from the side street, and it seems to operate pretty good even with the higher volumes. So with the signalized, with the U-turns being signalized and the main intersection being signalized, is capable of handling the higher volumes. Thanks.
Thank you, Rashmi.
Will, I'd like to add, there is a project being constructed on Route 10 in Chesterfield that has a lot of similarities to an RCUT. Actually, we call that a super street with a combination of RCUTs. So that would be, there is a similar example in an urban situation that is being constructed right now.
Thank you, Jason. Rebecca, would you please ask the next question?
Sure. If all of this is true, why isn't Vdot installing them, RCUTs, for every intersection?
Rashmi, I'd like to see if you can take this one, please, to help.
Each intersection in Virginia is analyzed individually, right? Each intersection is unique. And traffic studies, try to fit what's the best solution at a particular intersection that needs improvement, whether it be a roundabout, traffic light, RCUT, median U-turns. There's a whole bunch of new innovative intersections that are coming out. This intersection was selected for an RCUT. Route 10, like Jason Williams said, was selected for an RCUT. I'm sure you'll see plenty more in the future as Vdot moves towards the more innovative intersections. Thanks.
Thank you, Rashmi. Rebecca, please ask the next question.
This illustration has a 4-lane traffic flow on Old Buckingham. Is that part of the development plan?
Another good question. Jeff, would you please help me with this question, please?
Sure, Will. Actually, we're the improvements we're making along Old Buckingham really don't have anything to do with development in that area. That's just the widening that's occurring in order to accommodate the RCUT intersection. So the 2 lanes going, I guess I'll say northbound on Old Buckingham Road, the one comes from the left turn lane from Route 60 eastbound. The other one comes from the free flow right-hand turn lane. And then once those 2 lanes combine, they do merge back to 1 lane about by the time you get back to Old Buckingham Station. And then coming in the opposite direction, we do have 3 lanes approaching the intersection at that point. The one is a dedicated right turn lane for the free flow right turn movement. And then the other 2 lanes, similar to northbound Woolridge Road, those other 2 lanes will be if you wanted to make a left turn or you wanted to go straight across the intersection, you'll be in those 2 lanes where you would then make a right. When your signal turns green, that's a signalized movement. Go down to the U-turn down at American Family Fitness, make that signalized U-turn, and then come back to either southbound on Woolridge or eastbound on 60. So the widening improvements for Old Buckingham are just to accommodate the RCUT intersection.
Thank you, Jeff. Rebecca, would you please ask the next question?
Okay. Have you seen how long Lex Lane has taken?
Good question. Rebecca Worley, would you be able to help me with that question, please?
Yeah, sure, Will. So the Lex Lane widening project has been kind of an extended construction project that Chesterfield County has administered. However, we've also successfully completed many construction projects on time and would hope through our competitive procurement process for a contractor that we would be able to do that with this project as well. We don't see any issues with having the project completed on time.
Thank you, Rebecca. Becky, would you please ask the next question?
Sure. People who live in Walton Park, Walton Lake, Queens Mill, The Grove, etc. are impacted. We do not want it.
Jason, would you be able to help me with this question?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Estes. That's the name I'm seeing, so I apologize if that isn't you. This is a CIM meeting, Citizens Information Meeting. We're here to build the best design with your input. Having said that, if you strongly do not support this project, certainly this is a forum to provide that feedback. And there'll also be another opportunity, which is really our formal public involvement process, which is called our design public hearing. That'll be subsequent to this meeting, and Will can answer the question on that date. But that'll be another opportunity, and we'll be taking into account everybody's support and lack of support for the project. The county submitted this project for its application of Smart Scale. Their board of supervisors support it. Vdot selected as part of the Smart Scale process. So certainly there is early on there's some support for this project, but we always want to hear what everybody has to say and whether there are some things we're missing and why you don't want it. So please give us that feedback, and we can make the best decisions going forward. Thanks.
Thank you, Jason. Becky, would you please ask the next question?
Yes. When would construction begin, and how long is their proposed construction plan to take? Will the Lex Lane project be completed first, as we live in Walton Park and would not prefer to leave our neighborhood in two different construction zones?
I will take the first portion of this question. Construction is anticipated to start in 2025 and end 2026. We'll be refining our schedule as far to have a more defined date as we progress in our design process. As far as Lex Lane, I'd like to ask if Rebecca Worley can help answer that question.
Sure. Well, my understanding of the schedule for the Lex Lane project is that it's anticipated to be completed later this spring. So certainly in advance of construction of the Route 60 project.
Thank you, Rebecca. Becky, would you please ask the next question?
Hey, Will, 1 second. When I answered the previous question, I referred to you giving folks a rough date on the design public hearing. I believe that's 2022. Can you confirm a range
Yes.
for when that'll be?
Well, that we are showing in 2022. I think it's scheduled right now mid-year, but that's about as accurate as I can project.
Okay, next question. Should this project occur, will this be the first RCUT in Virginia?
Jason, would you be able to help me with this question?
I believe we've answered that a little bit previously, that we are building a series of RCUTs called a super street on the Route 10 corridor down in Chesterfield. So it would not be the first RCUT in Virginia. And there are other RCUTs being done at other districts across our state within Vdot.
Thank you, Jason. Becky, would you please ask the next question?
Sorry, I scrolled too fast there.
Quick follow-up to that, Mr. Vilak, our district traffic engineer, alerted me to the fact that there are 17 RCUTs across Virginia, either in design, under construction, or in operation.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you.
Since this intersection is a defining entrance to the village of Midlothian, how will the state handle the design aesthetic treatments that the county will ask for? How will we ensure that standard is carried on throughout the village? Is that a county question or a state question or both? Thank you.
That's a great question, and I'd like to ask if Rebecca Worley, our Chesterfield County resident engineer, can help answer that question.
Sure. Well, it is a little bit of both. Chesterfield County and Vdot, we certainly coordinate with each other on these types of issues, but I understand, especially as this is kind of a gateway to the Midlothian village, that there's a desire to make the medians of this area more aesthetically pleasing, if that means plantings or signage or things of that nature. So certainly we'll be in communication with Chesterfield County and likely the business districts surrounding this area if there's a desire to do additional plantings or aesthetic treatments that could then be permitted through VDOT's permit process for perpetual maintenance by those groups. So there's certainly options for aesthetic treatments here, and we could work with the locality or with individual citizen groups to permit that work and that maintenance.
Thank you, Rebecca. Becky, would you please ask the next question?
Will a traffic light be placed at Woolridge and Grove Hill?
Great question. I'd like to ask if Rebecca World can also answer that.
Sure. So first off, I'll just say that's out of the scope of this project. It doesn't include, that intersection is not included in the project limits here. And also that intersection we have studied in the past for a signal and it has not met warrants, but certainly as additional development or traffic patterns change in the Midlothian area, we can continue to monitor that intersection to see if it meets signal warrants in the future.
Thank you, Rebecca. Becky, would you please ask the next question?
What is the expected increase of traffic on Old Buckingham Road?
Great question. I'd like to ask if First, I'd like to ask if Jeff can help answer that question.
Sure, Will. I've got some information in front of me. It's not a true ADT, but it does give some peak hour volumes for 2020 and also for the design year 2038. So right now we're looking at I would say the PM peak is definitely the heaviest, with about 500 vehicles in the PM peak heading north on Old Buckingham and about 670 heading south on Old Buckingham. That was a 2020 number. And the design year for 2038 is about 670 vehicles in the PM peak heading north on Old Buckingham and about just shy of 1,100 heading south on Old Buckingham in the 2038 design year.
Thank you, Jeff. Rashmi, do you have anything else you'd like to add that's more global?
Nothing much to add. The study that was done for this RCUT in 2018 and during the design process has considered traffic growth on all approaches to this intersection. And as Jeff said, the growth rate has been accounted for in this project. Thanks.
Thank you. Becky, please ask the next question.
Why is Chesterfield County trying to encourage people to walk across Midlothian Turnpike?
That's a great question. Jeff, would you be able to help with that?
I can, sure, Will. You know, obviously we don't have pedestrian signals today out there at the intersection of Woolridge, Old Buckingham, and Midlothian Turnpike. It is very unsafe to cross any one of the legs of that intersection. What we've got here with this design is what's called a Z crossing style, if you will, of pedestrian movements. It's a little bit hard to see on the exhibit, but if you pull up the exhibit on Vdot's website, you can see a little bit more detail how the pedestrian patterns actually cross the intersection. If you follow the ladder style crosswalk markings, you'll see it's kind of shaped like a Z, with the main crossing across the intersection being there in the middle, where there's a concrete median refuge, all of the different crossings of the various eastbound, westbound, 60 and so forth. They're all signalized pedestrian crossings. The only ones that are not signalized will be the free flow right turn movements in the three crossings. Other than those three particular movements, all the movements to get to from one side of the intersection to the other, you will have they will have pedestrian signals and there's also median refuge islands for all of those as well.
Jeff, I'm sorry, I just managed to get my screen to pop in. Do you have anything else you'd like to add now that was zoomed in for you?
Yeah, you can actually see a little bit better. You can kind of see the Z style, if you will, with the crosswalk running east-west there at the bottom, and then you make a diagonal crossing, if you will, across Midlothian Turnpike to get to the north side, and then if you want to go over to the shopping center, you've kind of got the ladder style crosswalk pointing you to the left side of the screen, and then across also across the free flow right turn movement. So like I said, every one of those movements is a protected pedestrian crossing, with the exception of the three free flow right turn movements, which would be the lower right hand corner, the upper right hand corner, and the upper left hand corner. The lower left hand corner is a signalized dual right turn lane, so that one would also have signalized pedestrian phase.
Thank you, Jeff.
Will, and I'd like to add, with every project, we have to look at the generators, which is basically where pedestrians are coming from. And we have to look at the attractors, which is really their destination, where they're trying to get to. And if an intersection has both those things and the volumes are certainly up to a level that we have to address that, we really have to think about providing that accommodation. If we don't, what we know people will do is do it unsafely. And we see that quite often. So that's kind of the foundation of making the decision here, that we do have both. And we can certainly take your feedback on that. It's a great question, but that just want to add that to that, Will. Thanks.
Thank you. Becky, would you please ask the next question?
Is this plan being developed in conjunction with the Midlothian Special Area Plan? This RCUT seems contrary to the end goals of the plan in creating more of a village.
It's a great question. I'd like to ask if Rebecca Worley can help me answer that.
Sure. I'd say it's not really being done in conjunction with the special area plan. However, the alternatives analysis that was done before this project received funding was certainly shared with the team that was developing the special area plan. And we've also been in communication with their implementation committee. So as that special area plan comes into being, there certainly will be coordination with that project and this project to make sure that we're meeting both needs as far as development in the Midlothian Village area.
Thank you, Rebecca. Becky, would you please ask the next question?
Sorry. Given the majority of accidents are rear-end collisions, how does an RCUT reduce such collisions?
It's a great question. I'd like to ask if Jeff can help me with this one.
Sure, Will. I'll go ahead and start out and then ask Rashmi to kind of chime in on it as well. Generally, rear-end collisions, really the generator of those types of accidents are congestion at intersections. The stop and go, taking multiple changes in the signal to get through the light. That's usually what drives rear-end collisions at very congested intersections. So the fact that we're reducing the delay in the design year with this particular intersection, and the intersection as a whole will operate a lot more efficiently with a better level of service. That in and of itself will, ultimately reduce the rear end collisions because it'll mitigate the congestion for all the different movements at the intersection. Rashmi, do you or Rob add something to that?
Good explanation. Something I also want to add is that, like you said, the intersection will operate more efficiently. There won't be 8 phases at the signal. There'll now be 2. They'll be more coordinated, and that will increase flow through the intersection. With more capacity through the intersection, there's less congestion and less chance of a rear-end crash.
Thank you, Rashmi. Becky, would you please ask the next question?
I lived in England for 4 years, and all they have are roundabouts. Did you look at their detailed info since they're experts in them and you are not?
That's a good question. I would like to ask if, actually, I'd like to have a few people help me respond to this one. Jason, can you help with this, please?
Certainly roundabouts are a newer, innovative intersection in Virginia and the United States. But I think it's safe to say that Vdot is becoming very proficient with those. We have quite a handful built in Virginia and in operation. If you've lived in Chesterfield long enough, you're seeing roundabouts in existence and some being built. And in other parts of our district, which goes as far north as Hanover County. So they are becoming a more frequent design alternative. But as was stated earlier, with the type of volumes we have here, roundabouts will quickly fail. And really the max roundabout design we'll consider is the multi-lane roundabout, which would be the 2 lanes. And that does not have the capacity to handle the traffic volumes here. Thanks.
Thank you, Jason. Rashmi, can you please also help answer the question?
Yes, so in England, they've been driving on roundabouts for generations. And I'm from England. I was born there and I lived there for 10 years as a kid. So I remember my parents driving around roundabouts, going to school and stuff. But in the United States, drivers are still getting used to them. And while we're approaching the capacity that the other countries are seeing, we're still not there in the United States. But as more roundabouts do come into fruition around the country, I'm sure the capacity will increase as people get used to them.
Thank you, Rashmi. Rebecca, would you please ask the next question?
How many signals will be at the new RCUT?
It's a great question. Jeff, I'd like to ask if you can help with that, and I will change my screen over to zoomed in for your use as well.
Thanks, Will. So basically, this RCUT really functions, I think Will had said it very well during his presentations, functions very similar to a traditional intersection, with the exception of the vehicles that want to go straight across the intersection on the side streets, which would be Old Buckingham and North Woolridge, or if you wanted to make a left turn at the intersection. So in addition to the normal signals that you would have at an intersection, well, are you able to pan down to the U-turn movements so we can show those additional signals? There you go. So at this U-turn movement, this is the one east of the main intersection. The U-turn movement is signalized on both sides of the intersection. So you'd have a new traffic signal here, and then you would also have a traffic signal to stop 60 westbound traffic so that those vehicles could make that U-turn. So you would have this traffic signal as really an additional one, is what I would say, to a traditional intersection. You'd have the same on the other side, on the west side of the intersection, down at the other U-turn movement. And then we also have a dual signalized right turn lane from 60 eastbound to Woolridge southbound. You can show that one, Will. And one of the reason that we made this one a signalized dual right instead of a free flow like the other three quadrants is the amount of traffic that was making this PM peak movement. What we found out was there were so many vehicles. Not only was there a long queue here, and that's why we made it a dual right turn lane, but there's a lot of weaving going on between, if we made it free flow, the vehicles coming 60 eastbound that want to then merge onto Woolridge southbound and then eventually hang a left on Walton Park Road. There was a lot of weaving between those vehicles and the vehicles turning left from 60 westbound. So by signalizing this particular movement, this dual right turn lane, it allows them to have a protected movement so that the vehicles from 60 eastbound to southbound Woolridge have an unobstructed movement, if you will, to make a left turn either into our new left turn lane into Brownsway Road, which would be an entrance into the Walgreens shopping center, or to be able to merge over to the left to get into the dual left turn lane on Walton Park Road. So that was signalized really to protect the vehicles so that they wouldn't have to merge and cross over with the traffic coming from 60 westbound.
Thank you, Jeff. Becky, would you please ask the next question?
If a pedestrian wanted to cross Midlothian Turnpike from the southwest corner by Walgreens and end up at the northwest corner by McDonald's, how many pedestrian-controlled signal buttons would they have to press? There's more. Are all sections of the crosswalk, including far right turning lanes, controlled by pedestrian signal buttons? What additional safety measures will be in place to keep pedestrians safe during their crossing?
That was a great question. I'd like to ask Jeff if he can help with that, please. And Jeff, if you need me to move the slide, please let me know.
No, that's fine right there. So to get from one quadrant, I'll say the southeast quadrant to the northwest quadrant, which would be the Walgreens quadrant, if you will, to McDonald's, there's 7 different crossings. 2 of them will be unsignalized, which would be the free flow right turn in the lower right-hand corner and the free flow right turn in the upper left-hand corner. That's 2 out of the 7. The other 5 movements are signalized. So if you look down at the bottom of your screen, you'll see there'll be a push button actuation to get you across Woolridge northbound, another one to get you across from the dual lefts going Woolridge southbound, one that you'll have to cross 60 eastbound traffic. That's the 4th one altogether. And then you've got the long Z diagonal, if you will, in the middle of the intersection. And then you've got one that crosses westbound 60, another one that crosses Old Buckingham, and then an unsignalized one that gets you over to that other quadrant. So it is 7 traffic crossings total, and 5 of them will be signalized.
Thank you, Jeff. Let's see, there are 3 parts of that question.
Yeah, what was the part?
Are all sections of the crosswalk, including far right turning lanes, controlled by pedestrian signal buttons?
So
And
5 of the 7 are, and the 2 free flow rights are not.
And then what additional safety measures will be in place to keep pedestrians safe during their crossing?
Well, all of our different movements have a pedestrian refuge area. If you look and you see the light gray in the middle of the intersection, all of those will be raised concrete medians where the pedestrian actuation buttons and the signal heads will actually be. So every single time you cross a roadway, you will have a pedestrian refuge area to be able to stay in before you press the button and cross over to the next section. So.
Thank you, Jeff. Rebecca, would you please ask the next question?
Please share again the 3 additional ways to access Midlothian Turnpike headed westbound that you shared earlier. Also, is there a way to extend Walton Park Road at Woolridge to come out at Midlothian Turnpike westbound?
I believe this is the slide that you're requesting we share. As far as extending Walton Park Road to Woolridge to come out at Midlothian Turnpike westbound, I'd like to ask Rebecca Worley to answer that.
Or yeah, so it's really out of the scope of this project, but there is a development project that's been proposed in that southwest corner that would extend that Walton Park approach over to Grove Hill Road and would extend Grove Hill Road to come out and intersect Route 60. And that's it's Coalfield Station is the development plan there.
Thank you. Becky, would you please ask the next question?
I'm having trouble with audio. I hope this meeting is being recorded and will be posted on the Vdot website. Thank you.
I would actually like to ask Bethany, our communications, to answer that question for us. Bethany, would you please help here?
Hi there, this is Bethany Glover from Vdot Communications. Yes, the meeting is being recorded and will be posted to the project website before the end of the comment period. So anybody who missed the meeting or may have trouble hearing our audio today will be able to view it in that capacity as well. Thank you for the question.
Thank you.
Okay, so is there a stoplight prior to each of the U-turns to prevent a backlog of one of the U-turn feeder lanes? This wasn't apparent before, so that helps answer my biggest concern.
I believe that's a great comment. I appreciate that we were able to help you understand. Rebecca, would you please ask the next question?
If the right turns are free-flowing, what will pedestrians do who want to cross the highway?
Great question, Jeff. I'd like to ask if you can help with that, please.
Sure, Will. The idea of having these free flow right turn movements are obviously to keep traffic moving, to get them through the intersection. Very similar to the question that was asked before about slip lanes on a roundabout. There's two ways the pedestrians can cross there. Obviously, a marked crosswalk is supposed to be a protected crosswalk, not necessarily signalized, but it is a vehicle's responsibility to stop if there are pedestrians in a crosswalk. You could also, if you weren't comfortable crossing those unsignalized intersections, you could also wait until there's a break in traffic and walk across at that time, which in all honesty is what I would suggest. But that's the intent, is to keep those free flow rights moving and not stop traffic for pedestrians, to keep that traffic moving and keep from backing it up on the main line.
Thank you, Jeff. Becky, would you please ask the next question?
Why are roundabouts used throughout the UK? I think they have higher volumes.
I would say that a good question. I'd like to ask if Rashmi could help.
Like I said earlier, in England, they've been using roundabouts for generations. Many different types of intersections, even places where we would put like three-way stops, there'll be a roundabout painted in the ground. They may have higher volumes in bigger cities like London, but they have been used to it. And as more roundabouts come into play in the United States, our capacities will increase as people get used to it.
Thank you, Rashmi.
Next question. Will the ability to turn left from westbound Midlothian Turnpike onto Heath's Way Road be maintained or eliminated?
Great question. Jeff, would you be able to help me with that?
Sure, Will. Yes, to answer that question, yes, the left turn slip lane from 60 westbound onto Heathway Road will be eliminated with this project. Let me go over kind of the alternative way to get there, if you will. If you're on 60 westbound and you want to turn left onto Heathway Road, which is where the burger batch is, you would come down to the main intersection, turn left, and then you would make your first left onto Brownsway Road, which is the new left turn lane that we're showing there on the kind of the bottom of your screen on North Woolridge Road. We are maintaining the right in, right out coming eastbound, so there won't really be any change in access going that way. But westbound, you will have to go south on Woolridge and then hang that first left onto Brownsway Road to get into the Walgreens complex and to get into Heathway Road where Burger Batch is and so forth.
Thank you, Jeff. Rebecca, would you please ask the next question?
How will people get into Walgreens and BP? It looks like they cannot from Route 60.
Great question. We understand those concerns. Jeff, would you be able to help me with that, please?
Yeah, that's really kind of a piggyback on the one that I just answered. To get into, so let's say if you're traveling Route 60 eastbound, where before you were able to turn right into the Walgreens entrance, that is going to be a right out only now. And the reason for that is because now that we have a free flow right turn movement, well, it's actually free flow today, but with the additional traffic that we have forecasted for this intersection, that right turn movement on the 60 eastbound is going to be pretty heavy, and we wanted to eliminate that weave from people coming eastbound on 60 and then trying to, immediately once they get through the intersection, get in the right-hand lane to make a right into Walgreens. So if you're traveling on 60 eastbound, you'll want to get in the right turn lane and make a right turn onto North Woolridge and then get in that first left turn lane so that you can then turn onto Brownsway Road, which will take you into the Walgreens shopping center parking lot area. Same thing if you're on 60 westbound, you'll do the same thing. You'll continue down to the main intersection because you won't have that left turn slip lane anymore. You'll make a left at the signal, get in the left turn lane, and then turn left again on Brownsway Road. If you're traveling northbound on Woolridge, it won't be any different for you. You'll just turn in on Brownsway. And if you're coming southbound on Old Buckingham, because you won't be able to go straight through the intersection, you'll turn right, go down to the U-turn, make a U-turn, and head 60 eastbound to a southbound movement on Woolridge, and then a left on Brownsway. So the biggest really change in the movements is directing these left turns onto North Woolridge Road southbound, and then a left turn to Brownsway, and kind of removing that right in and that left in coming off of Midlothian Turnpike.
Thank you, Jeff. Becky, would you please ask the next question?
Okay, the next one's just a comment. I'm very familiar with RCUTs and I'm struggling to understand why this is even necessary. The reasoning with rear end accidents and improving traffic flow does not strike me as a cost-efficient solution given the topography and geography. I would say that's we can duly note that comment, and I hope you would fill out a comment form for us online so that we can document that. And would you like me to read the next? There's another comment. Hey guys, there are 2 roundabouts to get into London Heathrow. 2, one from the interstate and one to get in. How can those handle more volume safely? And this one cannot.
I'm gonna weigh in on the
I think that's
question.
a similar comment. We'll continue to investigate why these roundabouts that are being referenced in Britain handle more volumes, and we'll have
They
to
do take up a lot
document
more right of way also.
Now, I was going to point out there's a lot of businesses nearby that those would impact. But I think at this point we will close the questions and comparisons to the United Kingdom. As much as our traffic engineer would love to continue the conversation, that would have to be carried offline. Rebecca, would you please answer the next question?
Sure. The Board of Supervisors voted unanimously to approve the Midlothian Special Area Plan, which outlines a vision for the area that will enhance the village feel and should include narrower lanes, a landscaped median, bicycle and pedestrian improvements, and a consistent 35-mile-per-hour speed limit. How is an RCUT consistent with the Midlothian Community Special Area Plan?
It's a great question. I'd like to ask if Rebecca Worley can help me answer that question.
Sure. So I'd say I think part of it is the pedestrian accommodations that here that allowed pedestrians crossing, which is consistent with the Midlothian Special Area Plan. But as has kind of been outlined previously, obviously we also have to balance safety and operations. So when looking at the alternatives that were considered here, the RCUT was kind of the best balance of all of those solutions, still providing that pedestrian accommodation that the Midlothian Special Area Plan is really seeking, while balancing the safety and operations of the intersection.
Thank you, Rebecca. Becky, would you please ask the next question?
The complexity of this solution will result in more congestion and slower commutes. We are not Texas with the wide open land where RCUTs make more sense.
I would like to ask if Jason Williams can help me with that question.
Well, I think it's more of a comment, Will.
Yeah. Well, yes.
So I'd say, you know, our software that our tested and accepted practices on how we analyze these intersections would say different. That when we do grow the volumes, as Jeff mentioned earlier in the presentation, we run those through the micro simulation and all the analyzing we do, that it does show success with this solution. But, you know, it is a good question. There will be some complexity to driver behavior and how they interpret this, but we've seen that a lot with roundabouts. We've gotten so much pushback for putting in roundabouts in certain areas, and it's just amazing how much the public ends up embracing them. And I think you'll see that here if we do have a project that is implemented and constructed. Thanks.
Thank you, Jason. Becky, would you please ask the next question?
How many cars will be displaced from crossing Midlothian from Old Buckingham and Woolridge? Where will those cars go? Will this put more cars into the Huguenot Road, Courthouse Road, and Midlothian?
I'd like to start by asking Rashmi to help with this question. I believe more than one of us on our team would need to answer this.
So how many cars displaced from crossing from Old Buckingham? Well, all the traffic that comes from Old Buckingham will be making a right, and then making a left if they want to continue through to Woolridge Road. The traffic studies that were completed in 2018 and 2020 to evaluate this intersection have considered distributions. Jeff, I don't know if you can add on.
Sure, Rashmi. Yeah, like Rashmi had stated, it really doesn't displace any vehicles. I mean, we're not eliminating the movement of going from one side of the intersection to the other. We're just kind of rerouting vehicles down to these U-turn movements to reduce the number of signal phases and keep traffic, really flowing more operationally efficient on Midlothian Turnpike. There probably will be some vehicles. You know, if you're someone who uses Old Buckingham Road as a cut through to get down to North Warridge to go home because you don't want to go on Midlothian Turnpike, there probably will be some vehicles that, you know, instead of using Old Buckingham as a cut through, you may decide like, well, you know, I think I'd rather, you know, come down to Midlothian Turnpike down Huguenot and Courthouse, and then take Midlothian Turnpike west and come into the, you know, make the dual lefts, if you will, at the main intersection. So there will be some vehicles that choose to go an alternate route, but we're not, you know, I just want to make sure everybody understands we're not eliminating any movements. If you want to go from one side of Midlothian Turnpike to the other, you're still able to do that. You're still able to make a left-hand turn. You're just going to have to make a right to then either go left or to go straight.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Rashmi. Do others from our team like to chime in on this one? Thank you. Rebecca, would you please answer the next question? Ask the next question.
A U-turn always causes more accidents than other types of turns. How do you believe this will improve safety?
I'd like to ask Jeff to answer that question, please, if you would.
Sure. So these U-turns are designed, you know, this is not really a typical U-turn that you would find in a, you know, an urban arterial type roadway. These U-turns are specifically designed for two vehicles to be able to make the U-turn. That's why we have the bump out for the U-turn movement, which is technically called a loon. And I see one of the other questions coming up, and I'll just answer that one right now since since we're talking about these U-turns. There's a question about, are trucks able to make these movements? And the answer is yes. So we have a software program called AutoTurn that we run all these movements through to make sure the different size vehicles can make these turning movements. So we've run AutoTurn with a tractor trailer for every single one of these movements to go ahead and document and prove that even the U-turn movement can be made with a tractor trailer. Obviously, the tractor trailer would be in that outside lane because you would want him to have the biggest turning radius, so to speak, to make that U-turn. But every single one of these movements through the intersection, including the U-turns, are designed for tractor trailers. So there's no issues with trucks being able to navigate this type of intersection.
Thank you, Jeff. Becky, would you please ask the next question?
Will Coalfield and Charter Colony be widened to accommodate the increased traffic on those roads as a result of the RCUT? Right now, Coalfield is a
Cluster.
is a mess during drop-off and pickup of JB Watkins, and you cannot make a right from Woolridge to Coalfield because of the traffic backup during those times.
Since this is a regional question outside the scope of this project, I'd like to ask if Rebecca Worley can help me with this.
Yeah, I'd just say there's no, it's really out of the scope of this project. There's no current plan to widen Coalfield Road, but could potentially be considered for a future project, but no current plans for anything like that.
Thank you. Rebecca.
Yeah, the next question, I believe Jeff already answered. It was how will trucks be able to make these U-turns? So I believe that was answered. So I'll skip to the next one. How do you prevent drivers from cutting through adjacent neighborhoods onto Coalfield and Charter Colony, which puts more traffic in front of JB Watkins Elementary and Midlothian High School?
It's a great question. Jeff, would you be able to help me with this? And Rashmi, I may ask you to chime in as well.
Will, this is probably a better question for Rashmi or Rebecca to answer. You're right. I mean, anytime you make changes to a traffic pattern, you're always going to have vehicles that are, a small percentage are going to try to find a different way. But at the end of the day, with the improvements we're making to the operations of this intersection, people that are trying to use some of these, folks that are trying to use some of these cut throughs to save time, at the end of the day, it's not really going to be saving any time. I think once people start driving through this RCUT and see actually how much better it operates from an operational standpoint, I think people will find out that, as long as I, just continue to go through the intersection as I have been in the past, this will still be the quickest way for me to get from point A to point B. Ross, do you want to chime in on that?
I agree with you, Jeff. As with any new type of intersection treatment, there's going to be a little learning process. Over time, people will realize that it is more efficient, and that's the reason why we're doing it. And they will hopefully be using the RCUT on their travels.
Thank you, Rashmi. Becky, would you please ask the next question?
Why would this be safer for school buses coming northbound on Woolridge since they need to turn left to get to the middle school?
That's a great question. Jeff, would you please help me with this question?
Sure. It's again, like I said before, it's really not, we're not eliminating the movement for a school bus on northbound Woolridge to be able to turn left. It's not that it'll be, any less safe or more safe for that same school bus to make a right turn movement and then make a U-turn down at the loon there near the burger batch. So, this is how the RCUTs operate. They operate with the side streets always having to start your movement with a right, whether you want to go 60 eastbound if you're on Woolridge, whether you want to go 60 eastbound, 60 westbound, or whether you want to cross over to Old Buckingham, you have to make a right to either go right, go straight, or make a left. So it's not that it'll be any safer or unsafer to make this movement. It's just, this is how an RCUT operates. This RCUT wasn't designed so that, specifically so that school buses wouldn't be able to make a direct route. It's just, the way the intersection operates.
Thank you, Jeff.
Hey, Jeff, this is Jason. And I don't want to certainly contradict what you said, but I do think it will be safer, and I'm going to say why. If a bus has a through movement today, where we see the most tragic accidents is somebody running a light while that bus has a through movement, which is a high impact accident that a fatality could happen. That won't be happening with this intersection treatment. You will not have the option to go straight on Woolridge to interfere with that bus. So what you're getting rid of that potential running of a light accident where there's high impact, possibly a fatality. There's high velocities where you have that accident. This type of solution removes that risk, so to speak. So I want to make an argument that it will be safer for school buses to remove those type of accidents.
Thank you, Jason. Becky, would you please ask the next question?
With the extension of the median westbound, how can anyone heading westbound turn into Sycamore Vet or Village Bank without causing traffic backup on 60 West?
That is a great question. Jeff, would you be able to help with this question, please?
Sure. I just want to point out that, this is a high level concept plan that we've pulled together. There probably will be minor access changes as we move, forward with the development a little bit more. I do see that's a very good question and a very good concern to point out. We obviously don't want a vehicle stopping in the left-hand turn lane, or sorry, the left-hand westbound through lane, if you will, to turn into the vet. So we can look at maybe whether or not that median needs to be there. Maybe we should provide a short left turn lane instead. Maybe there's a different way to get access farther on down where we could allow a U-turn for vehicles to come back. So that's a good point, a very good point. I appreciate you bringing that up, and it's certainly something we'll look at once we get into the next phase of design.
Thank you, Jeff. And I'd like to add to this, please. That's a great comment to add to a comment sheet or CIM comment sheet. I do not know if you've already filled out the form yet or not, but I'd encourage you to do so. Becky, would you please ask the next question?
Would you comment on the safety of turning right from Woolwich heading toward Old Buckingham? When we turn left on 60 today, we have to watch out for eastbound drivers who decide they want to go to Walgreens. Oops, sorry, I meant turning right trying to go east on 60.
That's a great question, and actually is something we talked about. Jeff, would you be able to help me answer that question?
Sure. So yeah, we definitely understand your concern with that, and we hope that we've gone quite a way towards eliminating that with this design. So like I'd mentioned earlier, the northbound right turn movement onto 60 eastbound will continue to be a free flow right turn movement as it is today. The difference today is that vehicles traveling eastbound through the intersection are permitted to make a right turn, a right in, right out, if you will, into the Walgreens parking lot. What we've done with our design, because we want to maintain that free flow right turn movement, and we want to eliminate that weave in there from 60 eastbound vehicles, as soon as they get through the intersection, trying to immediately get into the right lane and then turn right into Walgreens, we've made that Walgreen entrance a right out only. So anybody that's coming through the intersection, headed 60 eastbound, they will not be able to turn right into the Walgreens. So the free flow movement will kind of serve as a protected movement, and you won't have to worry about somebody trying to cut you off at the last second to get into Walgreens. So this design kind of eliminates that from happening.
Thank you, Jeff. Becky, would you please ask the next question?
You mentioned that Grove Hill Road will be continued through onto Route 60. This will no doubt cause through traffic to use Grove Hill as a cut through to avoid the RCUT. How will Vdot limit non-neighborhood traffic through the Grove?
It's a great question. Rebecca Worley, would you please answer that question for me?
Sure, well, so the extension of Grove Road, as we've discussed, is not a part of this project, but a development project. And I'll just add that Grove Hill Road, currently where it connects with Woolridge, where it will be extended from, there's actually a roundabout on that section now. So I certainly think that that will discourage some through traffic, as we've kind of discussed before. As Jeff said, as people learn the efficiency of the route of the here, I don't think that they will seek out those other options that may be slower routes to get to Route 60.
Thank you, Rebecca. Becky, would you please ask the next question?
Back to financial benefits. What is the typical benefit cost ratio for major developments like this intersection?
That's a great question. I'd like to ask if Jason Williams can help with that, please.
Well, I think I'd like to pull back up the smart scale scorecard if you could, Will. I think it's important that we focus a little bit on that, if you could.
I can bring up this one now, and I can go get the smart scale scorecard in his PDF so you can zoom in.
Can you zoom in on the right one a little bit more?
Let me pull up a blue beam. Hold on here.
Oh, okay. So I think the operational question you're asking probably want to, if anybody else doesn't chime in after I speak, we'll certainly dig into that question a little bit more for you. But I just did want to point out when we select these projects, it's not just about operations. Very diverse set of criteria that is really backed by state law that judges projects against other projects across the state. And it looks at everything from, as you're seeing on the screen, from congestion mitigation to land use. So there is an operational safety part of this project, but there's a lot of other benefits that were looked at. So I just want to make sure we're answering that. There could be a cost benefit from an operations side, but there's also a cost benefit from the way Smart Scale judges, scores, and select projects. Thanks.
Thank you, Jason. Becky, would you please ask the next question?
This seems needless despite the reasoning given. What other alternatives were considered and why is this superior to each one? Please spend some time detailing the reasoning behind not choosing the other alternatives.
I'd like to ask Rebecca and Rashmi to help me answer this one. I'd also like to point out that we may have to provide some additional information outside of the CIM. I believe we have some time for some brief reasoning at this moment, but I think this is a better offline question for the detailed reasoning. Rebecca, would you be able to help with this?
Sure, Will. And I'd ask if you could return to the slide that has the table kind of outlining the benefits in terms of congestion, pedestrian accommodations, and safety. Yep, that's the one. So you can see here, there were actually 3 alternatives that were studied in detail, and those were the first 3, the partial displaced left turn, the restricted crossing U-turn, which is what this project is proposing, and a quadrant roadway. So all 3 of these are, and then also the roundabout, which was eliminated because of its inability to handle the volume of traffic here. So the first 3 were the ones that were studied in more detail. All 3 of these are innovative intersections that Vdot considers for use at junctions. And this kind of outlines, I don't know that we can really go into the details. We can certainly provide information offline for those specific alternatives, but this kind of outlines how those 3 alternatives performed in terms of congestion mitigation, pedestrian accommodations, and safety. And other than that, I think any more detailed information would really have to be provided offline as part of the alternatives analysis. I don't know that I have that level of detail available to discuss right now.
Yes.
And to answer the first part of the question, seems needless. So as Will stated at the beginning of his presentation, this intersection was identified as the 15th out of 100 ranked intersection in the Richmond District, which is 14 counties, for potential for safety improvement because of the congestion and the crash history. And that's how this project got started.
Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you, Rashmi. Becky, would you please ask the next question?
Where will Grove Hill intersect Route 60? It's a good question. I can pull up a set of plans. I can also ask if Rebecca can answer that. She is more familiar with this.
Sure. Well, I can't, couldn't quote the exact location where it's going to intersect. I'd have to pull up the development plans myself, but it will be further west of the RCUT intersection, closer to the middle school on Midlothian Turnpike.
And if you give me a second, I can actually bring up the approved site plan from Chesterfield County. This may take a bit. This is a large PDF. I'd ask you, if you have more questions about the details of the Chesterfield County site plan, please contact Chesterfield County, as they have better access. And aha, good, it's working. According to the site plan, it appears that the connection point will be west of the barn.
Yeah, just to clarify, that's not a VDOT project, correct?
This is a private development project. We have a copy of the approved Chesterfield County site plan. This is. Thank you. Becky, would you please ask the next question?
Any idea on how maintenance of traffic will be handled during construction? It is a very busy location. I can't imagine a whole direction of travel being closed for prolonged time periods.
That's a great question. We understand your concerns. Jeff, would you be able to help answer this question?
Sure will. I think one thing that's really important to point out is a lot of the pavement, I guess per se, that we're showing on this concept plan, that's the asphalt pavement that's out there today. There's very little impacts outside of existing right-of-way. So a lot of the pavement that we'll be using for this project, it may need to be milled and overlaid. You know, maybe there'll be some nighttime activities and so forth, but a large portion of the asphalt that we'll be using for these improvements is already out there today. So, you know, yes, we'll have to, you know, there'll definitely be some phasing of some of the movements and some of the traffic signals. We'll have to have the traffic signals in place to make that, to make those right turn movements down to the U-turns and so forth, and to, you know, build the bump outs for the U-turns. But all of those things are outside, you know, of existing traffic. Where we do have the concrete medians, we'll be paving those the whole way across so that we'll be able to shift traffic back and forth. And then one of the last things will be done will be to come in and build those concrete medians, you know, on top of the existing pavement that's there. So we certainly do not anticipate any total road closures. You're not going to see that, you know, 60 eastbound or 60 westbound is closed to traffic at any point. You know, there will be lane shifts. There'll probably be some nighttime paving work and so forth. Maybe some nighttime switchovers of traffic to some of the different movements. But all in all, most of the construction associated with it, outside of some of the concrete medians, will be constructed on the outside, which will be, you know, outside of the existing travel lanes and turn lanes as they are today. So it's not, it looks a little complicated on paper, but for the most part, you know, a big portion of the footprint of this intersection is already in place today.
Thank you, Jeff. Becky, would you please ask the next question?
I believe this is a follow-up to a question about the location of Grove Hill. It was submitted by Gary P. So Gary, if this is not the right thing, please submit another question. I hope I got this right. It says, but it should be considered, and I'm assuming he is talking about Grove Hill Road intersection. We cannot turn left as it is during rush hours. When Grove Hill is extended to Route 60, a signal should be placed there for safety.
We understand your concerns. That's a good question. I believe Rebecca Worley has answered that question. Rebecca, do you have anything else you'd like to add to this?
Sure. Well, I'd just say I don't know that that really applies to this project itself, but certainly as that Grove Hill extension takes place, we can continue to do a warrant analysis at that intersection to determine if and when a signal may be warranted there.
So just to follow up, how do we assess traffic for an RCUT? Do we take those sorts of things into account?
I believe the request is for a
Future
signal at
development.
Grove Hill.
Right, I just wanted to clarify that VDOT doesn't disregard development plan for other areas when we're doing our traffic, right? Isn't that correct? No?
Guessing we're asking Rebecca Worley.
Yes.
Sorry, I didn't realize that was directed at me. Yes, that's correct. Jeff McKay may be able to provide a little bit more information on this, but certainly that development as well as any other proposed developments were included in the traffic analysis for this RCUT project.
Great.
And I'd like to add that growth in the surrounding area was included in the analysis of the design year for this project.
Thank you, everybody. Becky, would you please ask the next question?
Can you please describe the reason for signalizing the right turn lane from 60 eastbound onto North Woolwich Road?
It's a great question. Jeff, I believe you started asking this answering this question. Would you provide some additional insight?
Sure will. So one of the biggest things we saw with this particular movement was, you know, a heavy amount of traffic of folks coming from in the PMP coming from 288 that wanted to make a right turn onto Warridge Road. We also have a very heavy left turn movement on westbound Midlothian Turnpike, making a left at the main signal. So what we were trying to prevent with signalizing this dual right turn was to prevent a weave where you have a heavy right turn movement destined for Woolridge southbound and a heavy left turn movement from from Midlothian Turnpike westbound to Woolridge southbound, and to create a weave in there where you have somebody in the right-hand turn lane that's trying to weave across, you know, 2 or 3 lanes of traffic to get in the left turn lane, you know, to make a left down at Walton Park Lane. So by signalizing this, we're giving folks that are traveling 60 eastbound that want to go to Woolridge southbound, we're giving them a protected movement. So when they get a green light, those 2 lanes will have full access to those lanes southbound on Woolridge. So they can either use that, you know, use the inside lane to make a left turn into the Walgreens shopping center, like we had talked about before, because if you want to go to Walgreens, you can't go straight through the intersection and then turn right. You would have to turn right at this signalized intersection. And then, but the main reason is so that we eliminate the weave with the traffic coming from westbound 60 to southbound Woolridge, so that we don't have, you know, 6 or 4 lanes of traffic all trying to get into the dual left turn lanes onto Walton Park Road.
Thank you, Jeff. Becky, would you please ask the next question?
Slightly outside the project area on Old Buckingham Road, starting from Gates Antiques, going to the Food Lion, there's a pedestrian footpath where you can see a consistent level of pedestrians are walking through the grass. Something like that. Could the project include a sidewalk extending up Old Buckingham towards Falling Creek? Thank you.
A great question. I'd like to ask if Jason can help with this question.
Well, you know, the purpose of this project is to deal with the intersection. So, and we do have a fixed budget. That's all we can get funding wise. There is no flexibility to get more money based on the smart scale system. So usually our goal is to accommodate the pedestrian. If there is a pedestrian route, it's certainly to provide a mechanism for them to be safe. And if that's a sidewalk, we would provide that during the limits of our project, but we would generally transition that back to the existing situation as quickly as possible when we depart from the intersection. So I think it's a great question, and it's one of those things that Rebecca Worley can track with the county to decide if it meets the needs for another additional project down the road. Thanks.
Thank you. And I've put up the slide that this has been a frequently asked question about areas outside of our project. So I've put the slide back up, and the PDF of the presentation has links built into them. So this is a clickable link to the my.virginia.gov website. Rebecca, would you please ask the next question?
Can you imagine a mother and a stroller crossing the turnpike given this plan? It's absurd. This will not work for pedestrian crossings. What alternatives other than a roundabout have been considered? Why this one? This is not pedestrian friendly at all. Please regroup and rethink this.
Thank you for your question and comment. I believe we've answered some of this. Rebecca Worley, would you be able to weigh in on this?
Sure, well, yeah, I just agree. I feel like we addressed a lot of it, and the slide that you've presented right now kind of shows how we looked at pedestrian accommodations. Just because of the volume of traffic at this intersection, it's certainly difficult to provide a place and a way for pedestrians to cross and have refuges. So this was that was considered as part of this project, and certainly the pedestrian accommodations for the RCUT were pretty equal in the benefit that they provided to some of the other solutions, the other alternatives that were considered here.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Something I want to add is that this new design improves on what's out there today. Right now, there's not a way to cross Route 60, and with the RCUT, there will be protected phases where a pedestrian can cross the road. It's a proven technique on other urban corridors, and some pedestrian movements will not have conflicts with most movements, except, like it's been stated before, the free flow rights. But it is state law for motorists to stop for a pedestrian in a crosswalk.
I agree with that, Rashmi. Having walked out there, there's no refuge right now for pedestrians, and this would add refuge throughout that intersection. All right, next question. I'm concerned that folks who would be traveling from Old Buckingham to Woolridge might choose to cut through the entrance to American Family as a workaround to get both to Woolridge, but also to the new condos being constructed next to AmFam. This seems unsafe for AmFam customers walking to and from their cars. Might there be a plan to put in some speed bumps in front of that business to slow down cars using this as a cut through?
It's a great question. And I'd like to ask if Rebecca Orley can help me with that one.
Sure. Well, I'd say that it's probably outside the scope of this project, but Vdot does have a traffic calming program that we could consider some, if it was determined that there was an issue with speeding on a state maintained road through here, we could consider some solutions for traffic calming.
Okay, it sounds like you're putting the cart before the horse and not first diving into the Midlothian area plan. So that's just a comment. Please answer the earlier questions about school buses and the possibility of extending Walton Park Road.
All right, I believe we did answer a portion of the question, but it was a good question. Rebecca, did you have more information you can provide about extending Walton Park Road?
Well, first off, I think I need to ask this person maybe to submit a comment sheet for us to follow up, because I'm not sure I completely understand the question. So Walton Park Road on the west side of Woolridge, where it turns into Coalfield Station Lane, that is part of the Coalfield Station development that we've been discussing, the private development. And that section would have connections over to Grove Hill Road. So if that didn't adequately answer the question, I just ask if whoever asked it could put it in a comment sheet and we could follow up with them.
Yes, or please also you could email me the question and what way we can follow it up with additional details. Thank you.
Where is everyone walking to that warrants this change? Are they walking to Food Line and back with their groceries?
That's a great question. Jeff, can you start answering that question? I may have to push some of this to Rashmi.
Sure. Well, what we're trying to do with this intersection, I think, as a couple folks have said earlier, this is really about trying to balance the best solution for this intersection. What we're trying to do is we're trying to, mitigate a very heavy, AM, PM peak hour traffic east and west on the Midlothian Turnpike. Also make it a lot safer than what it is today, not just for vehicles, but for pedestrians as well. Even with what we're planning here, it may look like a circuitous route, so to speak, to get from one side of the intersection to the other. But today, there's no accommodations at all. So even what we're presenting with this design is better than the current situation today. And, it's all about coming up with a good balance for this intersection. It's about improving safety. It's about being able to address the 2038 design year traffic, which is going to be significantly more than what it is today. And the study that was done previously, selected this as the the preferred intersection type, to be constructed here to address all those future considerations, including pedestrian, including safety, including traffic. So it's kind of, you can't really point at one thing and say that, this is better or this is worse. As a whole, it's a type of intersection that will address all the different needs, both from a safety standpoint, from a vehicle standpoint, and from a pedestrian standpoint in the near and far future.
Thank you,
All right.
Jeff.
To make the U-turns, will you have to wait for a green light, or will there also be a yield to oncoming traffic option?
That's a great question. Jeff, would you be able to help me with this, please?
Yes, each U-turn movement, the one on the east side of the intersection and the one on the west side of the intersection, they will both be signalized. So you'll have a green light that allows you to make that U-turn movement. You won't have to yield to anybody, and the vehicles on 60 eastbound and westbound will be stopped with their own traffic signal.
I believe part of that question is there an option for a yield to move? For instance, similar to like left-hand lane. Looks like they're asking for the question is, could they go anyway without the stoplight?
I think it's the
answer to that
flashing
was
yellow
no.
question, Rashmi.
No, the U-turns will be protected movements. There will be no option to make a left on flashing yellow. There will be red arrows.
Thank you.
Okay, this is a comment. Other countries, third world with worse traffic than the UK, have figured these situations out with less complicated solutions. Please reconsider your confidence in this solution. Others have already invented this wheel. So I would ask that person to submit a comment sheet so
Yes,
that
please.
we can address it. How many RCUTs are planned for Broad Street in Henrico?
That's a great question. We do not have our our resident engineer from that location, but I'm going to ask if Rashmi can help out and answer that question.
There are STAR studies going on along Broad Street, which are long-range studies that smart-scale projects get pulled from. The STAR studies are investigating any improvements that need to be implemented along the Broad Street corridor. I'm not totally sure how many RCUTs have been recommended out of that study, but there is a possibility that there may be some coming in the far future along Broad Street.
Thank you, Rashmi. Would you please ask the next questions, Becky?
All right. Folks are less used to this sort of an intersection than a roundabout. Asking Virginians to move to this instead of a roundabout is like asking a toddler to start sprinting rather than walk. That's a comment. I like what I'm seeing, but there are still concerns about the traffic that will result on Woolridge at Grove Hill, Coalfield, and Charter Colony as a result of the RCUT. If the RCUT is built and it turns out it does not work as anticipated, what is Plan B?
All right, that is a great question. And before we answer this question, I'd like to go back to the previous one. That was a comment, and ask all those who are posting comments in our Q&A, please fill out our CIM comment response or comment sheet. That is where we are collecting comments, and we will be addressing those as part of our CIM meeting record. For the question about Plan B.
I'm going to read it again.
Sure, yes, thanks.
I like what I'm seeing, but there are still concerns about the traffic that will result on Woolridge at Grove Hill, Coalfield, and Charter Colony as a result of the RCUT. If the RCUT is built and it turns out it doesn't work as anticipated, what is Plan B?
That's a great question. I think I'd like to ask Rashmi to help me with that initially.
So there's been several studies conducted for this intersection to select an improvement to implement out here, and the RCUT was selected as part of all of those studies. There's been a lot of thought and detail and analysis that has gone into the selection of this RCUT, and based on all the analysis we've done and the future growth and everything like that, we're pretty confident that this RCUT is the best solution.
Thank you, Rashmi.
All right. Could the concrete meet? Oh, I wanted to go back to that comment to your request about comments. We don't want you to stop commenting. We just want to be able to get through as many questions as possible. So your comments will be addressed if you submit comment sheets. It's easier to answer questions in this forum quicker if we don't go through each comment individually. Okay, so next question. Could the concrete medians be planted to adhere to some of the recommendations as laid out in the special area plan rather than a sea of concrete?
That's a great question. Jeff, would you be able to help with that one, please?
Sure. So our current plan, if you can see a few of the medians we have there on Midlothian Turnpike are green. Those are planned to be grass medians. We did have a meeting last week with some folks from the Special Area Plan Committee asking us if there were other opportunities to make some of these concrete median grass medians. That's something we'll certainly look at in the future. I think there, maybe some other conversations behind the scenes about some different things that can be done to some of these grass medians after our project to, do some landscaping and plant some more ornamental trees and some things like that. Those things won't be part of this project, but I think there is some more opportunity for us to have some of these medians, especially some of the bigger ones, be grass instead of concrete. And we'll be working with the folks from the Special Area Committee to make some of those things, to take some of those recommendations into account.
Thank you, Jeff. Rebecca, would you please ask the next question?
These alternative routes to access westbound Route 60 will take more cars right past 2 schools. It's a comment, but maybe it could be addressed. You want me to skip ahead? So someone.
Yes, please. Let's skip to the next question.
The
We only have a few minutes left.
There are lots of comments. What feedback from local businesses have you received about this project?
That was a great question. We have received some feedback from local businesses through the comment sheets. There are some concerns, and we understand that. I would also like to ask Rebecca Worley about her interactions with the Midlothian Special Interest Group.
Sure, yeah, so we have been communicating with the Midlothian Special Area Plan and their implementation committee, and there certainly are business owners and operators on that committee. So we've certainly been coordinating with them. And then I'd also just add that this is just the first in the public involvement process for this project. We're still very early on in the design phase. So there certainly will be more communication with any impacted businesses and property owners in the future as this project develops.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Will there be a sign on Midlow that says to access Route 288 to turn on Woolridge? Are you trying to steer more traffic onto Woolridge to access Route 288?
That's a great question. I'd like to ask for Jeff to answer the first one about the signage.
No, there will not be interstate style signage that will, direct vehicles to 288. I mean, what we're trying to do with this RCUT intersection is to address the traffic, especially in the PM peak that's turning left onto southbound Warridge as it is today. I think, most of the vehicles that are making that left during the PM peak, are going to residential areas along Woolridge and south. And, those folks don't need a sign to know where they're going. They're very well aware where 288 is. So there will not be specific signage that directs people to 288.
Thank you, Jeff. And for the second portion of the question, I'd like to ask initially for Rashmi to answer that.
We're not trying to steer more traffic on Woolwich to 288. We're trying to address the concerns at the intersection as they are today.
Thank you. And Rebecca, do you have anything you'd like to add to this question?
Yeah, I'll just add that the leftbound turn from westbound 60 onto Woolridge southbound, that's already a very heavy turn movement. So this design does a good job of accommodating those heavy turn movements. It's not necessarily that we're directing traffic to Woolridge, it's just accommodating the existing demand for that turn.
Thank you, everybody. Becky, would you please ask the next question?
If VDOT determines this to be a successful way to reroute cars, will VDOT seek to build additional RCUTs all up and down Midlothian Turnpike? This is an area that is supposed to be being developed to have more of a village feel. This feels like a slippery slope. Can you please address this?
That's a great question. I'd like to ask if Rashmi can answer the first portion about applying round arc cuts up and down Route 60.
As each intersection comes up for evaluation due to congestion or crash concerns, arc cuts could be a consideration at each intersection. But remember, context is key. It depends on what the intersection is, what type of volumes it's experiencing, what type of crashes they're experiencing. So every intersection is unique, and a solution will be applied independently. And maybe it may be an arc cut down Route 60 somewhere else.
Thank you, Rashmi. And as far as the Midlothian Village feel, I'd like to ask if Rebecca Worley can help with this question.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that. So thanks, Will. I'll just add that, Chesterfield County does have a Route 60 corridor study that they're kicking off for that Midlothian Village area to try to develop potential transportation projects that might help implement that Midlothian special area plan. So VDOT will certainly be involved in that process as they do that corridor study, just to ensure that any recommendations that come out of that study are something that VDOT would approve in terms of implementation. So, like Rashmi said, each intersection has to be considered individually, but as that Route 60 corridor study is developed, VDOT will certainly be involved in the review of that process as well.
Thank you, Rebecca. Becky, would you please ask another question?
What is the projected increase of traffic for North Woolwich Road as a result of the project?
That's a great question. Jeff, would you be able to answer some of that?
I don't have any information about, how the traffic's going to increase as a result of the project. I do have, some of the projected traffic volumes for what they are today versus, what they're going to be in the future. I don't know if that would answer the question or not, but, we like we had talked about before, I think Jason William mentioned too, and Rashmi as well, we did take into account the agreed to growth rates for the area and grew those volumes from the 2018 and then the updated 2020 counts that we did and grew those to the 2038 design year. And, taking those forecasted volumes from the 2038 design year is what we use then to run the analysis on the RCUT. So, the analysis that we did for the intersection doesn't necessarily say that, we're building this intersection, it's going to generate more traffic, and kind of just the opposite. We're designing and building this intersection to address the traffic that's going to come over the next 20 years.
Thank you, Jeff. Rashmi, are there additional information from an overall traffic study that you can add to the answer?
Nothing much to add to what Jeff said. Like Jeff said, the growth rates were considered in the study. And I don't know if Rebecca would have anything else to add if she knows. But yep.
Thank you.
Okay. The 1 mile section of Woolridge Road between Coalfield and Walton Park has a posted speed limit of 45 miles per hour, but is rarely followed. What does your most recent speed assessment for this section of Woolridge Road show?
That's a great question. I'd like to have asked if Rashmi can wait on this. And Rebecca, I might ask for you to help as well.
I'm not aware of any recent speed studies that have been done on Warridge Road. For the 45, like you said, the roadway is posted 45 miles per hour. If there are speeding concerns or concerns about the posted speed limit, please reach out to Vdot using the link and phone number that Will showed on the slide, the 1-800-4ROAD or my.vdot.virginia.gov, and you take a look at it.
Thank you. Rebecca, do you have anything you'd like to add to that?
I cannot recall off the top of my head when the latest speed study was done on Woolridge and what the results were, but certainly if a citizen wants to submit that request, as Rashmi stated, we'd be happy to provide the latest speed study.
Thank you. I believe we have time for one more question before I need to close this meeting out. Rebecca, would you please ask the next question?
Oh, that's okay. Of the three alternatives that were considered, the RCUT is the most costly by a factor of 4 times, and all of them have a less than break-even benefit. From the report's recommendation, Alternative 1, RCUT, and Alternative 2, partial DLT, provide clear safety benefits and improved level of service over projected future 2038 no-build conditions. However, their planning level costs exceed the calculated benefits, significantly so for Alternative 1. What problem is this proposal trying to solve?
This is a great question, and I'd like to bring up the slide I had earlier. I'd like to ask if Rebecca Worley can help me answer this one.
Sure. Well, I'm assuming, yeah, you're pulling up that one.
Yes.
Yeah, so the citizen references the alternatives analysis that was done for these 3 options. We'd be happy to share that. But ultimately, I think as we've discussed, it was felt that the restricted crossing U-turn provided the best balance of the 3 types of benefits: congestion mitigation, pedestrian accommodations, and safety. So, and because it received smart scale funding, that's also a measure that the total benefit of the project was seen to be worthy of funding in comparison to many projects statewide. It did receive a smart scale score that was high enough to be funded.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Will, I'd like to add, basically I've seen a lot of questions about the safety of pedestrians crossing at the continuous right turn movement. So we can certainly look at an option of putting ped control there, but it will be at the sacrifice of this intersection operation operating more efficiently. So, we have to balance that. We want it to be safe, but there is a balancing act between moving people through the intersection and pedestrian control. So we will look at that. It's a fair comment. People do cross some of these continuous movements in many spots, and it is always a challenge. So again, we will look at that. We appreciate the comment.
Will this recording be transcribed, in particular the Q&A, so that citizens can easily review the various comments, concerns, and responses? I hope that Vdot will provide this service, as this is a very important issue for thousands of citizens. Thank you.
That was a great question. I'd like to ask if Bethany from Communications can answer that for us.
Yes, the meeting is being recorded, as well as the questions that are being asked. We also have a frequently asked questions sheet that's going to be updated on our website as well. So all of the meeting information will be shared.
I believe part of that was the request for transcribing the meeting. Is that something that we have the technology to do at this time?
We'll definitely look into it and provide it if possible.
Thank you. All right.
I'm going to keep going for 7 more minutes, or?
Well, we do need to conclude the meeting. There is actually some things I'd like to go over at the end.
Okay.
So I'd like to say this concludes the question and answer portion of our virtual citizens information meeting. As noted in the beginning of the presentation, we are soliciting your feedback early on our project. We have set up a CIM comment form and provided it in both a printable and online format. I would like to switch screens to show you the project website and where to find both versions of the comment form. As shown on the screen here, this is our project website. Near the bottom of the website are the links to the online and printable form. By clicking on the link to April 29, 2021 virtual public meeting, you will also open the CIM website. At the bottom of the CIM website is additional access to our CIM comment form. The CIM comment period will close May 9th, 2021. If you are using the printable version of the form, please make sure it is postmarked by that date. Please note, this does not mean we are no longer accepting comments, but those comments will not be included as part of the CIM report. The online form will be switched back to our general comment response form, and you may also email us with your questions. Finally, we'll have a formal public hearing in 2022, and we'll be presenting a refined concept for your additional feedback. We would like to thank you for taking your time meeting with us today. We hope you found today's meeting informational, and we appreciate all of your early feedback on this project. Thank you. Have a good day. At this time, we are closing our WebEx meeting.